Do you want to have your maps be more than just a colored grid for your PC and NPC tokens to stand on during battle? Do you find yourself seeing maps made by others and think, oh, what the heck, why don't my maps look like that? Do you want your players to say things like, hey, that's pretty neat. You spent how long on this? Or the best compliment, sounding disappointed when you don't have a map for an area. Good, I'm going to take you through some basic and interesting features in Roll20 to make better maps, along with some ways to really squeeze as much as you can from the program. Whether you're a newbie or veteran at making maps, I hope that I can teach everyone something new, or at least give you a different way to think about map making. I have logged, oh gosh, that's a lot more hours than I thought it was. Needless to say, I have been trapped at Roll20 for a long enough time to give you a wide array of pointers. Alright, let's get started. If you have your game created, go ahead and hit that create new page on the top left. Aw sweet, a blank canvas to get your next masterpiece on. Except not really, we need to get it set up first because the default settings are not your friend. Click on the cog when hovering over the map. There you will have page details and dynamic lighting. Don't worry about dynamic lighting, that will come much later. The first thing we are going to want to do is increase the cell width to 100 pixels. A lot of map art, whether you buy it or pick it up, uses 100 pixels as the standard it goes by. I have had maps that were specifically made with 70 pixels in mind, but those have been outliers. Also, take a look at how much better it looks when you're zooming in all the way in. A lot more clear. The next thing you're going to want to do is give your retinas a break and change your background color. So as I was making this, Roll20 did an update where they added these settings. Both with the background, there's board color and backdrop color. And this is not the settings I would normally use for this, but I wanted to show you something. Currently, how it is done compared to how I used to do it, is backdrop color controls this color here. The actual board itself is the thing that you can build on. So if I'm going to change the board color, which is the background color that I'm talking about, you would use the board color to change it to like the gray, and the backdrop color changes this color. So let's just put it as orange. My problem with it is that the default setting has apply dominant color from map layer as its default setting. And that one sucks because if you have a lot of outdoors maps, this is what it's going to look like all around your map. And it's a pretty ugly color, not going to lie. At least having it like this. And if I were to take away the apply dominant, see it changes to bright orange, probably just flashbanged you. I would just leave that as this transparent. It's going to make it this grayish color. A lot easier to work with when you're doing your map. Alright. It can be to anything you feel comfortable with. I personally like black or dark gray, but hey, if you want hot pink, brown brick, or hashtag 00FF00, then that's your prerogative. Okay, maybe not the hot pink or green. That hurt way more than the white. Not only will this be easier on the eyes when you're staring at this screen for potentially hours, but it is actually very useful when picking out map assets. Most assets are better now, but every once in a while you might get one with a little bit of white around its edges, which really smack your maps with the ugly stick. The worst part is after you notice it, you can never ignore its presence. This one is more of an optional one up to personal preference, but I would change up your grid lines to something other than gray. When you are fidgeting with the correct size and position of an object and mere pixels matter, it is better to easily see where the lines are. Even if you are going outside them or going to get rid of them later, you're going to want them when building. Last thing, increase that size, baby. 9 out of 10 times you will need more space than the default 25 by 25. You are going to want plenty of space to work with when building a map. Plus, even when you're done, the outside of your map can be used to store all your goodies you have waiting for the players. Like fire, when they inevitably decide to burn a building down any way they can. Or something more surprising. You can always shrink the map afterwards. Just remember, it will always expand downwards and to the right, and so when you shrink it, it'll go up and to the left. Alright, now that the map settings are ready to go, let's get started building the map. Just kidding, you thought we were going to get right into it? No, we are going to do some things to save a lot of time later and make your life easier. First, let's just start grabbing some assets in order to work with.
Think of what kinds of items, furniture, etc. you want to use for this map. Then start to gather these using the search bar in the Art Library tab. Now I'll be honest, there's some good free assets on here, and a whole lot of bad ones. Let me give you some tips. Only search using one word. Anything more than that, and it will probably get you nothing. Oh, and look out for the fact that results will repeat for infinity at some point.
The office notepad. Oh, fuck you. What the? What is this? Of course it's a JPEG. Alright, whatever.
Get used to trying all kinds of synonyms for things. Things will also show up when looking for somewhat related assets. And finally, look up what something is made of. If you look up marble, you get these marble floors. Very nice. But you won't get them if you just put in floor. If you can't find a specific asset for something you want, you can always cobble one together with many assets. The grouping function is your friend here. You don't want a 10 asset creation becoming undone with one misclick. Remember, look out for ones with white edges, or liars that look like they are PNGs but are actually frickin' JPEGs, and who even uses this unless for some frickin' gag? During your mini searches, you are going to find obscure things that you might really want later for a different map. Save those. Make a new map and give it the settings I went through earlier. Name it something like Saved Assets. When you come across an asset you like, go ahead and just slap it in here. If you want to go the extra mile that I regret not doing for a long time, put a little text box with the word that you used to search it. It might save you time in different games. Now besides the, just absolute beauty you can find in the free assets, where can you get others? Well, one spot is the marketplace on Roll20. There are a lot of wonderful packs that can give you up to like 200 art assets to work with. Do some browsing around sometime. You can also get maps already finished from here as well. I recommend you do so for certain things like a giant mansion. The sentiment among many map makers is that making a mansion sucks. It takes forever and is great if you want to go more insane than you already are. I agree with this. I have made one that was not even that great and it still took a very long time, and at the end of the day it got burnt down without me remembering to make a copy before I plastered fire all over it and started deleting things getting destroyed on it, causing my eyes to twitch months later thinking about how much time I sank in that and don't have much to show for it. You could avoid this crippling brain rot by making a copy of maps you like before the players come through it like a steamroller that they are, or just spend $5 and save yourself 10 hours of work. Now don't let any of this discourage you if you are purely free to play. This is a hobby, not a job. At the end of the day, if your map can convey what you want to your players, you have met the requirements you need for your map 90% of the time. But it's always good to try new things and get creative with anything that you do. Oh, and of course, if you are unlike me and have actual artistic abilities, you could always give drawing your own maps a shot. The only thing I would recommend is that you make art assets and build them into maps. That way you won't need to draw the same chair 100 times over 10 maps, just once, and copy and paste it. Heck, if you're happy with how it turns out, maybe you can go smack them in the marketplace yourself and make some cash from it. If someone out there makes a good asset pack made for a game dealing with Eldritch Horrors, tell me. I could suck a golf ball through I will buy it immediately. If you have some kind of software to edit images, you can download assets from Roll20 by clicking on the asset and pressing Z. It makes it pop out and you can right click on it now. If you have any kind of software with the ability to lower opacity, do this right now. Make placeable shadows in different shades. You can turn a normal map into a map where the sun is setting. You can make this room into a freezer. You can make this normal basement into the kind where as a kid you would run up the stairs after turning the light off because there was definitely something waiting to grab you if you couldn't get into the safe grace of light. If you don't have software that does that, I'll give you a little secret. If you go to the site linked in the description, sure, this was made for tokens, but you can get many of your shading needs here. Mess with the settings and you can get the very same dark room shade. I used this one a lot during my most recent campaign. So here we are, an empty page. For artists, an empty canvas can be intimidating. You will probably feel this intimidation as well for certain maps. It's not so bad to think about the layout of your 10x10 tile room, but how about when you plan on making a small group of houses in a village with both interior and exterior? Ugh. So to fight against this dread, starting out hopefully you followed my advice and already have some assets chosen. When you have already been thinking about the map in a small way like which buckets of slime fit the aesthetic better, it's easier to keep the momentum up into the bigger decisions of the map. You also want to keep in mind just how important this map is and divvy up your time and effort accordingly. Are you using this for potentially a character introduction or a gag that will last at most 10 minutes? Probably more like 5 minutes? Maybe don't spend 2 hours giving it 100% when you probably have other maps that the players will be looking at for 1 to 2 hours, like a battle map. Unless, of course, you are a perfectionist or just enjoy building maps that much, then hell, go for it. I'm not your dad who's going to say you can't have fun that way. I'm only going to think it. The last bit of advice I have before we get into the meat and potatoes of building the map is if you are someone that uses music when they run their games, you should do this, by the way. Listen to the music while you build. Listening to the song or songs when you are building the map really puts you in the headspace for it. It has also given me random bouts of inspiration that make me about another event that happens on the map, or maybe some dialogue ideas for a character that the party will meet at this location. With or without the assets, what you should do is slap down a token for a PC or NPC to reference for sizes of rooms and objects. After you have your lovely goblin, just start plopping down assets. Probably your background or floor assets, unless you are a psychopath and save them for last. If you are the Patrick Bateman of map making, allow me to at least suggest putting the floor assets on the GM layer, get your map done, send the floor to back, then bring it back into the map layer. How I start some maps is by using the draw shape tool to give a rough outline of the map. Hold shift while making them and it will auto snap to the grid. Just put it on the token or GM layer so that it won't be a pain to remove later on. On other maps, I will kind of just wing it. These maps usually aren't that important, or I just don't have an exact plan for it. To help kickstart your thinking, start with why this map exists and what people or things do in it. It gives good ideas when doing even the finer work later on, as maybe it's not just a shed, but a shed where local teenagers hid a giant fake gorilla that they stole in. Or maybe a shed where teenagers hid a giant real gorilla in that they stole from the traveling circus and it likes to throw cream pies at people. Then it becomes an encounter for the party too. You know those dang hooligans always grabbing wildlife and stuffing them in sheds? How despicable. You will probably come up with less stupid ideas, but it will still help you flesh an area out. With the general plan laid out, or consciously ignored, start by placing down large assets, pieces of furniture, large geographical features, maybe a fountain, that kind of thing. Now when you are starting a map, it's a good idea to have at least one centerpiece, or even one for each room if there are multiple large ones in the map. Now what I mean by a centerpiece is an asset that is usually going to be one of the largest on screen, and is probably one that the players can interact with in some way.
I mean, Throne just ate a bunch of it.
Yeah. I mean, you're also watching him eat a statue.
It
smells
good. Choice. Yeah, it smells good though.
I'll lick it.
Does anybody know Steve-ub?
No. No.
What are you eating?
This burger right here.
What about the fries?
I did not expect this session to turn into Sal ASMR eating.
While Ezreal's doing that, Silas is going to be poking at the food. Like literally poking it.
Literally poking it.
If you want to give your players more opportunity RP when on certain maps, just put things that they might be interested in. You will know what your players and their characters will be interested in better than I could ever know. But for me, it was things such as, with this map, which I didn't make myself, I only placed in some final touches, I placed a bunch of bones in a room and aptly named it the Bone Room. This was for story reasons, and of course the players hear the Bone Room, and I knew they were going to want to see the Bone Room. Whether for perverted or spooky reasons, I don't even know. Alright, rapid fire round. I'm going to give you some tips when building maps. Layers. Get to know all the weirdness of layers of Roll20. Token layer is always above the background layer. Don't put map assets on the token layer unless for a very specific reason. You can have these cool shadow effects or even really show that this character is inside a cage. But for any map that you will be moving tokens around, doing this is dangerous. You can only send assets either all the way forward or all the way back. If you have to put this goblin under a table, no problem. Put the goblin here and then just bring the table to the front. This gets tricky when the goblin needs to go to the bottom of this pile of weapons. Instead of trying to memorize all the layers of which asset was where, start by bringing these weapons to the GM layer, make the goblin go to back, bring the floor back to the back, and then bring the weapons back. Back, 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 back. Or avoid this and avoid the assets together if you can. You could also just start throwing them around all the place like a child, bring the goblin to back, and then bring the floor to back, and then keep hitting the undo button. Undo button. The undo button can be very useful, but keep in mind it will only undo position changes and deletions. You cannot undo sending something to back or front. If you make a copy of a map, you also cannot undo anything that was done in the original. Tints. Tints can be great for changing the look of something. It can give an asset a different feel, even as simple as making this blood seem fresh. Be careful not to tint too many assets. It will make the map just chug when loading it, and zooming in and out will cause it to freak out. Never tint your floor tiles. The Alt button. When messing with the size of assets, hold down Alt to freely change the dimensions. This also allows you to freely move tokens and assets outside the grid. Walls. Walls should usually be the last thing on your map. There's a few ways to go about making them. You can stretch any asset to being long and thin, then placing them along where you want your walls to be. You could also simply have a small black line be the walls. I say small because I use thin on dynamic lighting layers, and you want the players to see just the edge of it. That was less rapid than I hoped. Oh, just like making maps, right? Let's get started with the finer details. The things that will make your map go from looking like this to looking like this. Give it depth, shadows, things underwater that stick just a little above, plenty of objects above and below one another. These things give your map a real feeling of depth to it that just make it straight up better. Flat can be a deliberate choice you make for certain things, but besides those, give your map that sweet, sweet depth. The easiest way to make objects look better is to give them small shadows around them. There are many assets available that come with shadows, which are awesome, but some don't. If this is a map you care about and have time, give those assets just a little shadow to make them look nicer. Clutter, clutter, clutter. Make the area look lived in. Unless super sterile and organized is a feel you're going for, leave stuff around, have some dirt, some scuff marks. This will give your map a more natural feel. People will pick up on the map being more of just a map if it looks more like this. Like I said with tints, before you can make some tweaks with an object to look like something else, or simply use it as something else. See this hole? With the right lighting and black background players see, boom, it looks more like a giant fog. If you are on a map that probably won't have combat, turn that grid opacity all the way down. Don't worry if your players inevitably start a fight with the peaceful forest creatures. You can just bring it back up, or even use it as a trick. Use it plenty so that your players think no grid means no combat, then boom, surprise them with a deadly robot and then turn the opacity back on. Better roll initiative. This part is for all the money bags who put out to Roll20. That's right, let's get into dynamic lighting. Dynamic lighting is mostly a tool used to limit what your players can see based on the location of their character on a map. You have 3 options, though you might as well only have one. You got your walls, one-ways, and transparents. Walls are the one that you'll be using the most of. It simply blocks vision and light going both ways. People can't see through walls, so why should their tokens? One-ways are very finicky, and I have only found a few applications for them. With the one-way, you designate a side that can see through the barrier and the other side is blocked from it. The arrows denote which side has the ability to see through, which you can flip by right-clicking on the line and using this button. Now maybe you're like me, and the first time you see this, you are thinking, awesome, this can be used for elevation, especially something like a rooftop. Wrong. Unless you only have one building in the entire map, if they somehow get up to the elevation by, say, another building, flying, or stacking up goblins like a pyramid, they still can't see through it. So what's the difference from just having a normal wall there and then deleting it once they can see the rooftop? Good question. Another one which is doable is, say in 5e, someone casts darkness. Now you could make a one-way to not be able to see within the area, except no one can really see anything in magical darkness unless they have Devil's Sight, so if anything, just slap a dark cloud asset and then put the NPCs on the GM layer. I have yet to come up with a good reason to use the one-ways. Transparents are for when you want your players to see something, but still have their toddler pin up and not allow them to go to it. It will still block players from moving through it with the restricted move option, which you should always have on if you are using dynamic lighting, by the way. However, I have never used the transparent one either. My idea would be for like bars or a cage, but what looks more interesting? The transparent one on the left or the little walls I made for each bar on the right? I guess it can really be used for purely indestructible windows? Good luck making something completely indestructible to your players. Now, of the ways you can draw the lines yourselves, get used to using the Draw Shape tool. Holding down Shift is the easiest way to make dynamic lighting for walls. For closed doors, you want to have a separate line, for in case the party opens it or cracks it to get a glimpse inside. I like to use the polygon or line tool for maps like caves. It gives that uneven looking feeling that comes with the craggy formations of a cave. Besides the normal uses for dynamic lighting, you can also use it for great tension. Have things move just on the edge of the player's vision. Have only slight cracks from a boarded up room only hint at what could be behind it. Give them a crack of vision from a closet they are in to see the monster they are hiding from. Like with the rest of map making, have fun and get creative with it. One of my favorite things I've done using it is having 2 different versions of the same map that the party was split on seeing. Some of them are under the effects of hallucinogenics, and so do the other players and their characters. When they are talking about giant buzzsaws, they are simply confused about what is going on, as I slyly move the tokens myself to give the illusion like it is only one map. Want another way to have a full nighttime looking map? Hit on daylight mode, but turn the brightness down low. I've used this to make a fight where the only constant light is around fires the party can huddle around as the map switches from daylight to full darkness each round. You are using a virtual medium to run games. Use and abuse it in the funnest ways you can think of. That's all I could think of for this video, but I'm aware this is not everything to Roll20. If you have different methods or other useful tips, leave a comment for others, including me, to learn from. The use of Roll20 for map making is tricky to get used to, but it's a skill all the same. Just like with any other skill, the more maps you make, the better and faster you will be at the process. Don't get discouraged if it's difficult in the beginning. All I have left to say is thanks for watching the video. If you would like to see the entire process for making some of the maps shown in the video, or want to see a man turn his brain off and go insane for more than 30 actual minutes trying to get water the right color, I have live streams of these on my channel. I plan on trying to live stream every Friday or Saturday around 1 PM Central Standard Time. I will be either building a few more maps in Roll20 or exploring other programs for map making, so that not only Roll20 will hold the leash to my collar. I'd also like to give a big thanks to my friend Zanny who helped me out with this video. As for if I will do more videos, maybe. I have to do some thinking on if there's anything I feel passionate about to make. So until next time, or if there is a next time, go ahead and get out there and show me up at map making, huh?